course.
Thank you, Jari. Thank you for inviting me to give a keynote talk about 6G and sustainable development. And I will start sharing. Here. Can you see my slides?
Not yet, but it says that you have started sharing.
Yeah. Hopefully now.
Yes, perfect.
Great. So my name is Marja Matinmikko-Blue and I come from the University of Oulu, and we've started 6G research there already 3.5 years ago in the Finnish 6G flagship. And recently I was appointed there as Director of Sustainability and Regulations, a kind of new role which reflects how the world is developing and also how the wireless systems are developing. And I would like to tell you a little bit about this linking between the future wireless systems and sustainable development, the overall goal of sustainability. And I know that we all have different backgrounds and our research topics are quite different. I did my first doctoral degree in cognitive radio techniques, and since then I've looked into the spectrum management perspective more. And I'd like to give you the overview of the sustainability and then challenge you to think what it could mean for your own research topic, your own research interests. So this is the outline of today's presentation. First, some introduction to the 6G flagship activities and how we have tried to build a joint 6G vision together with different stakeholders globally, and especially the role of sustainable development in this 6G vision. And then, of course, I want to bring my own research thing into this, and it's spectrum management, spectrum access. So I'll talk about a little bit of spectrum access in the context of 5G and 6G, and then some conclusions. So the Academy of Finland appointed 6G flagship in 2018 in May, and that was the world's first 6G research program. And when we started that, we were told that you're quite early to start looking into the next generation when 5G deployments were only taking place at that time. But this is an 8-year-long program. It encompasses many different research units at the University of Oulu, and the research is organized around these 4 strategic research areas. Wireless connectivity is the biggest. It's the wireless connectivity, developing all kinds of algorithms and techniques for the future systems. Then also devices and circuits, distributed computing and services and applications. So those main 4 research areas is where the actual research is then conducted in the different groups. And we are about 300 people at the University of Oulu working within this big program. It collects our projects together that we are doing around these topics. So overall, we've started with this vision for the year 2030. So usually it takes about 10 years to develop a mobile communication generation. And 5G deployments are well on the way, and that evolution still continues. So the next releases of standards are planned for the coming years, so that has not stopped. But at the same time, the research for the next generation has already been launched, and that has been the case also with other generations. So the time spans are quite long to reach a new generation. And we started with this vision for the year 2030. That 2030 is the target year that the community is aiming at. And then what the world looks like. We had this idea that society will be data-driven, and this is enabled by near-instant unlimited wireless connectivity. And the goals are to support 5G deployments are on their way. It still continues. There's still a lot of work to to do, even research work to do in finalizing 5G and enabling those deployments. And at the same time, the development of fundamental technology components for 6G has started. What 6G will be, we don't actually know that yet. It'll be eventually defined, but already it's time to look into those potential technology enablers for 6G. And the overall goal with this mobile communication wireless research is to speed up digitalization of the society. And it seems that the ICT mobile communication, it's now seen as a huge driver for the whole infrastructure and industries and the whole society, all sectors of society. And so far within these 3 years of operations, we have more than 1,000 publications, more than 50 doctoral degrees. And then we've done some actions to develop joint 6G vision that I'll summarize shortly. And we do this in close collaboration between the different stakeholders, including academia and also industry collaborators, public sector and others. So for more information, you can go to the 6G channel. There's a web page called 6gflagship.com. It's the main website for this Finnish 6G flagship. And in this 6gchannel.com, you can find a lot of information about the results we've done. And we published 13 6G white papers in the past couple of years. And then last year we also had a webinar series about these white papers, introducing almost all of those white papers, and those recordings should still be available if you're interested. And then we're publishing this kind of 6G Waves magazine, which is collecting key findings into easily accessible format. And the next issue should appear at some time late November, early December. So there are 3 issues of the 6G Waves already published, and that's a good way to see what's happening within this 6G research. So in addition to the Finnish 6G flagship research program, there is a European level 6G flagship research project funded by the European Commission called HEXA-X, which started in January this year. And that is the major European level 6G research project. It brings together a lot of partners, more than 20 partners, industry and academia. And already in its first operational year, the HEXA-X project has already published 6 public deliverables that you can find from the HEXA-X project website. And then going back to this joint 6G vision building. So the Finnish 6G flagship organized the world's first 6G event, the 6G Wireless Summit in 2019. And one of the major outcomes of that event was the world's first 6G white paper. So we hosted a workshop with 70 invited participants from different organizations for joint 6G vision building. And the outcome was depicted into this world's first 6G white paper. And there were a lot of findings in this white paper, but I want to highlight the major finding that we reached the consensus that 6G development should be driven by the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So both 6G and the UN SDGs, they target the same year, 2030. And what else was new in this joint 6G vision building? There was a common consensus that future systems, future mobile communication networks, they are not only communication networks. They bring together the communication service with a lot of different other services like sensing, imaging, high accurate positioning together with the communication service. And that can then open up a lot of new applications that we don't even know what they could be today. So there'll be a lot of technical advancements, but also there'll be a whole new business ecosystem. So business side of this 6G development is very interesting. And already in 5G, we are seeing that the business ecosystem is changing. There are new players, traditional stakeholder roles are changing. The same will continue to happen. And in the white paper, we were depicting these different resource configurations. So there are a lot of different user needs, end users, machines, humans, enterprises and so on, different end user groups with different needs. At the same time, there are a lot of different resources and different resource configurations and combinations that can be brought together to serve the different and often very localized needs. So this is a major thing that will change already now. There'll be a lot of different stakeholders, new players, and the stakeholder roles really will change. And then one thing we are already seeing as the first time in the 5G era is this local operator paradigm. And for about 5-6 years, introducing this idea that typically these mobile communication networks, they are deployed by mobile network operators. 3 in Finland. And we've been promoting that idea that different stakeholders should be allowed to deploy their own mobile communication networks within their location where they operate, like the port, like an industry site, a factory, like a university building. And that fully depends on the spectrum access. You can do that in unlicensed bands, but to really deploy a mobile communication network that is operating in exclusively licensed bands, you just don't easily get them. They are auctioned typically to the big MN. This paradigm shift has concept, but now it's happening. For example, Finland has made it possible to get local spectrum licenses in certain bands like 2.3 gigahertz band and 25 gigahertz. Regulatory topic. It's about the spectrum access rights, who gets to deploy wireless systems. And it's an interplay between this business regulation and technology aspects. And it's happening in some countries, but not everywhere. So we're seeing with 5G spectrum decision making, we are seeing a divergence between the countries in terms of making these local networks, they're often called private networks, possible. And it really is a situation where different countries in Europe are making different decisions. And now that this has changed, nothing stops the same happening further and further when we go towards 6G in the next 10 years. So how will this local operator paradigm, it will not vanish, it'll just keep increasing. And then usually these mobile communication networks, they have a set of technical minimum performance requirements that are defined at the international level. Key performance indicators are often related to the capacities and delays and spectral efficiencies and so on. So what will be these indicators for 6G? In my opinion, it's way too early to set any numerical targets, yet they will be defined at the ITU level later on. What is the new consideration is that what should be those, like what kind of new indicators should emerge. Then there's also a lot of discussion about value indicators, societal aspects, bridging these ICT and the different societal aspects, and what kind of indicators there could be. It's a totally open topic, and there's a lot of interesting research questions in that domain. So that summarized what was done already since then, last year and partially this year. So we as the Finnish 6G flagship continued this joint 6G vision building, and we opened 12 thematic expert groups to continue the work based on the first 6G white paper. And altogether 250 people joined these 12 expert groups from 100 organizations and 30 countries. And the outcomes are 12 white papers that were published in 2020, in June 2020, and then one was published this year in April. And in this picture, you can see the different topics that were addressed there. And I was leading one of these expert groups on the 6G drivers and the UN SDGs, and I'll tell a little bit about those key findings. I was also coordinating this white paper preparation process, and here you can see the topics. So one is on business, alternative business scenarios for the future, also trials, validation areas. That is a big theme for the future technologies. Networking, the role of machine learning, edge intelligence, trust, security and privacy, broadband connectivity, machine type communications, localization and sensing. And then the final one that was published earlier this year is the white paper on RF enabling 6G opportunities and challenges from technology to spectrum. And that's the one that I believe is very interesting to this community. So if you haven't looked at that yet, I strongly recommend to have a look at that white paper. And the one that I in 6. So what is their connection? I believe that everybody has seen those logos of those SDG 17 globally agreed goals. It's a big framework that aims that those goals should be achieved by the year 2030, and it's also the same year that the next generation of mobile communication networks is aiming at. So in a way, this when you look at the time-wise, these goals should be met even before 6G is in the market. So those goals should be met through the technology. But still, it's meaningful to think about the world from 2030 onwards, when 6G is there, and what the world should look like in a world where these goals would be met. So this white paper expert group, we had about 40 people in this work, and first we looked at the mega trends which influence sustainable development of 6G, and then we spent a lot of effort on building this linking between 6G and the SDGs, and there as a result for the future networks, we developed a threefold role. So this ICT is a provider of services. It's the digital infrastructure, it's the backbone of society. So it definitely can provide services to help reach the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And at the same time, it can be a very powerful measuring tool, collecting of data at a very local granularity about sustainability related topics. There are those topics that are mentioned in the UN SDG framework, but there's also a lot of different indicator data that could be collected through the help of ICT sensors, all kinds of technologies, and then bringing that data together and combining that data into meaningful actions to help to meet the Sustainable Development Goals. And then the third role is that naturally any technology deployed and operated in line with these sustainability goals. And what they mean actually for wireless systems, you can't find the answers from the SDG framework. They are not there. They have to be found and developed from elsewhere. So what is sustainability and sustainable development? Nobody can avoid seeing this term. Different. So overall here, sustainability, I like to use this term that sustainability refers to the principle of ensuring that our actions today do not limit the range of economic, social and environmental options open to future generations. And this is already from 1997, so there's nothing new as of today in this, but it's just that the importance of sustainability is ever increasing. And this has a it's called triple bottom line, that economic, social and environmental parts of facets of sustainability. Then the sustainability is the goal to be achieved. Sustainable development is then the development that is needed to meet the goal of sustainability. So it's the development that meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. And that dates even longer back into the year 1987. So old concepts, old terms, and now they are extremely important in today's day and age. And the UN SDG, the internationally agreed framework, Agenda 2030, it's a concrete framework for sustainable development with specific goals, 17 goals. Then those goals have targets, more detailed targets, whose achievement is measured through a set of indicators. And there are more than 200 indicators in that framework. Look at this framework and the connection to the ICT and to mobile communication systems. There are also other important framework, other important standards that are related to the specific sustainability aspects of different parts like product development and so on. But this is a generic framework. So it's a huge topic that is just evolving all the time. So the triple bottom line of sustainability has this social, economic, and environmental sides, and they are interrelated. So many things happen at the intersections of this social sustainability and economic sustainability, or for example, social and environmental sustainability. So they are, it's a complicated mix. And we made a paper, it was published very recently, based on the white paper and then some follow. And the UN SDGs was published in Wireless Personal Communications last week. And for it, like this environmental sustainability is very important topic, and that's where the technology development plays a crucial role. So when developing the technology, it has to be environmentally sustainable. And then what it means for different technologies, what it means for wireless communications, there are standards related to that. And then there are a lot of technical research, like when developing new technology, that should be the major design goal now, that it is sustainable, environmentally sustainable. Then the societal sustainability refers to, especially to the use of those technologies, how the communication technologies, how they could help the achievement of societally. At the same time, economic sustainability. So you can do a lot of. If they're too expensive, for example, then they will not be taken into a use. And stakeholders have conflicting views on what is feasible and what is needed. And then regulations is very critical in terms of they can set requirements. They are setting requirements to the various verticals. And transportation, there are tight requirements that come from those regulations, and then it's important to develop those methods to reach those targets. So what is this mobile communications industry doing regarding the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals? So GSMA, which is the operator organization promoting the operator perspectives, they have already, since 2018 at least, they have assessed the mobile communication industry's impact on the SDGs, and they concluded already then that mobile communications and ICT can help the achievement of all 17 SDGs. They published their previous result. They have a specific methodology how they evaluate how mobile communication contributes to the achievement, and then they've assessed annually the changes. So overall, this impact, the contribution of mobile communications to sustainability goals has three levels. through this deployment of infrastructure and networks, they are the foundation for the digital economy. So we need that infrastructure. And there is actually one SDG, this SDG 9, which is directly on infrastructure. But that's not enough that there is ICT infrastructure. It has to be available to the users. So how to access that infrastructure, how to connect. And for example, there the economic part becomes very crucial. So if it's so expensive that users cannot afford it, then this goal is not met. And even if you have access, you can use it if there is no relevant content, no services to be used through this ICT infrastructure. Still something is missing. So you need all these three components. And then through these three components, it is possible to make contributions to different sustainability targets. And in this paper that we recently published, we collected from multiple sources what this connection. There's already material in the white paper that we did, but we looked into each of the 17 sustainability goals, what they mean, and you can read these later on, or they are actually also in the paper, that you can name a one-to-one mapping, like a contribution from our sector to the SDG. It's kind of nice place to be in that there is impact to developing. But I will not go into the details here. What I would like to mention is that when looking into this SDG framework, we as researchers nowadays need to explain how we contribute. Like in funding applications, we've had to explain what is our contribution to the SDG framework, and easiest way is through this SDG 9, that it is this industry innovation infrastructure. We are developing that infrastructure, but it's also can be through other goals. For example, if you have educational activities, like if the sector you're addressing is education, then it's SDG 4. Or agriculture, farming, that can contribute to SDG 2. So it's possible to make these connections, and we are kind of asked to do those contributions, even in terms of publications. We are being measured through publications, and also now there are new metrics within those, that how do the publications, to which SDGs do they contribute? So the sustainability has really entered all aspects in the funding applications, in the research publication analysis, and so on. But then the current SDG framework and the current link to ICT through the indicators, there are 7 indicators out of 230 indicators that are called ICT indicators, and they are here on the right: proportion of schools with access to internet, or proportion of youth with by a mobile network, fixed internet broadband subscriptions, proportion of individuals using the internet. So this gives you an idea of what kind of ICT related indicators there are in the current SDG framework. And then they are related to some specific targets, like the achievement of certain targets is measured through these ICT related indicators. So this is the level of granularity in the SDG framework when it comes to ICT part. But the reality is way more complex and more intertwined. We looked at the SDGs and we looked at the framework, SDG framework, and the indicators there, and we have this quality education SDG 4 as the example because it has the most ICT specific indicators in the framework. But then there are a lot of other indicators that the sector itself has proposed, has come up with, that could be used, that are helping to assess how the sector is contributing to the SDGs. And they are listed here in this, they are from the white paper. So you can look at the white paper. We summarized them from many sources. For example, the ITU, the UN-based agencies for ICTs, is doing a lot of work about the ICT's connection UN SDGs. And then the new thing that we did in this white paper was that we were looking into how the new technology can help the achievement of specific SDG targets through the existing indicators in the framework. So that was a new way to vision what 6G can do to help the targets. And there are examples within this white paper. We did not do this to all targets. It would have been a lot of effort, but it's an effort. It's a job that should be done. And then the stakeholders. So who should be doing this whole 6G R&D? It started as an academic thing, and very early on, industry joined, and now the community is looking into 6G R&D. Academia, industry, and also regulators are interested in where the evolution is going. And the ICT industry itself, creating these technologies, has a big role, but equal for the next generation of users, end users, different societal groups, user groups, different verticals that are 5G is already aiming at serving the verticals, but the end user needs were not asked. So that's a big thing to address in the 6G development. What do the users really want from the new technology? And of course, governments play a huge role. They fund, but the R&D, they fund a lot of R&D effort. And then they define the policy, they define the regulations that these networks must follow, and also the use of these networks has to follow. They also define the sustainability requirements. So they have a lot of say in what the future will look like. And I come from this research organization, now a university, and we as researchers should bring this unbiased research towards sustainability that is not driving certain agenda, which is bring real knowledge to the table and to the decision makers. There are so many open questions. I'll come back to those shortly. So if you look at sustainability, from the triple bottom line of sustainability, environmental sustainability is one important where the technology developers can make significant contributions. And here we've added the 6R framework of environmental sustainability. It was originally developed, but it's also useful to think about what it would mean in the context of wireless networks. Reduce, reuse, recycle, recover, redesign, remanufacture. It all goes down to reducing usage of different resources, reusing different materials and resources, recycling, like conversion of waste into something usable, recovering what is reusable, redesign, what it means for your own topic, and remanufacturing. And we did a very small exercise in the paper that we published recently. We took these 6 R's and looked at the environmental of this. Reduce energy consumption is a huge thing. It was talked about in the prior generations too, but that never became an indicator. It never became a metric to actually measure and to compare. So that should definitely happen in the future, that this defining energy consumption, measuring it, and then the aim to reduce that. That's the same applies to many other resources for the principal resources of wireless communications. But you can read these in the paper. They are there in a table. We also listed some research questions for this environmental sustainability of 6G under these six topics: reduce, reuse, recycle, and so on. So maybe you'll find some interesting things there, especially this: how to measure end-to-end energy consumption, how to develop zero energy devices, what are the energy consumption limits and energy efficiency targets, reuse, sharing of different resources, sharing of infrastructure, and so on. Then I'll go to this role of regulation and especially spectrum management topic. And here I took an old slide from 2017 that maybe some of you have seen it, about these local micro operators. It was a dream 4 years ago. Now it has become a reality that it is possible for different stakeholders to deploy their own local networks, and then that depends on the spectrum availability and also on many other things, but that is a fundamental driver there. So what spectrum management is, it defines which radio services can be operated by whom, and it's a complicated decision-making process. It's done by the regulators. Overall goal is to maximize the value of spectrum with sufficient utilization and benefits to society, but then it's interpreted very differently by the different governments. And now we have seen this because the different aspects of society, there's a lot of talk about serving the different verticals, and who are the right stakeholders to serve those verticals. It's not just the big MNOs in the needs that could be served by different stakeholders, and that has now taken place. And we were proposing this concept years ago, and now we've looked into how those spectrum networks, and there are the 3 overall spectrum management approaches: administrative allocation, market-based mechanisms like auctions, and then the unlicensed part. And that is an in the systems themselves, how they can use the spectrum, what kind of transmission parameters they use. It's very much regulated, and then the rules are very different depending on where you can, under which regime you are working in. And now these 5G spectrum awards, the major band that is being awarded is this 3.5 gigahertz band. It varies from 3.4 to 3.8, and it varies globally in different parts. And we were looking into how it is awarded in different countries, and realized that very differently. So several countries have made local spectrum available in this band with different kinds of arrangements. On the other hand, some have not, like Finland gave that arrangements being made that it is very different in different countries. It's a new. We have the big operators, and then we are starting to see local stakeholders, and it fully depends on what spectrum they can use. And this is a short analysis of the Finnish situation. The good, nice and good bands with a lot of bandwidth available is for the operators. Then two spectrum bands are for local players, but it's either quite narrow bandwidth or it's very high frequency band, millimeter wave, which impacts the deployment of those networks. So most of the good, nice and good spectrum bands are for the operators. And this is like a background information into looking at the 6G situation. So what will happen there? And what we've been talking, a lot of stakeholders wishing to deploy their own private networks, and they are really into sharing if that is their only way to be able to deploy a network. The situation is quite different from 10 years ago when we were doing this community radio research. So now there is interest from different stakeholders towards this. About the future, that was kind of what's now happening as of today. And here I want to come back to this white paper on RF enabling 6G opportunities and challenges from technologies to spectrum. So if you have not read this white paper yet, I believe that it'll be of a lot of interest to you as the community. And competition over spectrum is huge. Different systems compete. The mobile communication system competes with broadcasting and satellite services and so on. And sharing is not common. is very static. It's based on very long separation distances, for example. And what we've seen already now is the complexity of spectrum bands. And this then means like 5G bands range from 700 megahertz to 28 gigahertz in Europe at the moment. We are talking about even going higher in the frequency domain in the future. Then that significantly impacts not just the deployment characteristics, what you can do with those bands, but also the implementation aspects, and you are the experts working within that domain. So this complexity is seen to increase. Also market structures change. Something that was totally objected 4 years ago is a reality today, and the fragmentation between countries is increasing. And the same device, a single device, it operates in a variety of bands. It operates under different spectrum access models. It uses unlicensed bands. It uses exclusively licensed operator bands through the operator network. So it's very, very complex situation. It's not getting any easier in the future. And here it's important to consider these new approaches, new technologies. And I would like to see that spectrum sharing through these advanced interference management schemes, the new enhanced versions of the cognitive radio technologies that were there developed 10 years we already see the need, the emergence of a large number of local networks. They are keen to share. And then I would like to already start to conclude some parts that this presentation was kind of bringing the sustainability aspect into the development R&D of the future wireless systems. And the research on 6G, it started in 2018, and the joint vision building started then. The results of that are collected in these 13 6G white papers, and the work has not stopped. It has just started then. Now in the global scale, at the ITU level, there is the process ongoing where different stakeholders are contributing technology trends for IMT for 2030 and beyond, and also vision. They're building a joint vision for IMT for 2030 and beyond, which we call 6G. So that now it's the time for these technology components, vision building. Later on, there will be the exact requirements and what is required, and those key technical performance requirements, what 6G will be. That'll happen several years from now. But the big thing is that sustainability is the driver. And it is acknowledged, it's not independent of anything we do anymore. It has to be integral part of our research and development activities. Like I hope that through this, that every researcher would think about what sustainability, the big goal of sustainability and sustainable development mean for their own research. I think about that for the big overall goal of framework of sustainability, and also for the individual research topic of spectrum. Within that context, and the SDG framework is one framework, but it doesn't give the answers to the technology developers like most of us are. There are also other initiatives happening. Sustainability standards are being defined and developed. There is this triple bottom line of social, economic, and environmental perspective of sustainability, and especially the environmental perspective of sustainability. It alone is very big, and it has a lot of subtopic. It's not just about energy efficiency or energy consumption, but it's about all aspects of the product life cycle. These networks and devices, they are complex entities. Each and every component has to be designed and developed with the sustainability goals in mind. So it is a big big theme for the next decade. So I think now it's the right time to connect this bigger goal of sustainability with the individual researchers' own research agendas for the next decade. So that concludes my presentation about the sustainability in the context of 6G. Thank you.